3 days before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, I found my fiancé replacing my expensive custom artwork with his mother's cheap family portraits. He smiled brightly and told me she was moving in permanently. He had no idea the wedding was already over in my mind, and that by morning he would be the one legally evicted. My name is Vanessa, 33 years old, and I am a financial forensic auditor based in Chicago. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to set a brutal boundary with a toxic mother-in-law and an entitled partner. I had just finished a grueling 12-hour shift at my corporate firm untangling offshore accounts and hidden assets for a high-profile client. My brain was completely fried, my feet ached, and all I truly wanted was a quiet evening and a glass of expensive Cabernet in the comfort of my luxury townhouse. It was a beautiful 3-story property in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the city. I bought it entirely on my own, with my hard-earned money, long before my 34-year-old fiancé Connor even knew my name. Connor worked in middle management tech sales. He loved wearing flashy designer suits and playing the part of a wealthy executive, but I knew his actual commission checks rarely matched his lavish lifestyle. Still, I loved him, or at least I loved the man he pretended to be when we first started dating. I unlocked my heavy front door, dropped my keys on the console table, and stopped dead in my tracks. My pristine, minimalist living room looked like a disorganized shipping facility. Exactly 15 battered cardboard boxes were stacked hazardously against my custom Italian leather sofa. Rolls of packing tape, bubble wrap, and crumpled newspaper littered my expensive Persian rug. And right in the center of the chaotic mess was Connor. He was standing on a metal stepladder holding a heavy hammer. I watched in absolute disbelief as he actively pulled down my favorite piece of art. It was a massive, original abstract canvas I had purchased to celebrate my promotion to director. He tossed it carelessly onto a nearby velvet armchair, not even checking to see if the frame scratched the fabric. In its place, he began hanging a faded, gaudy family portrait housed in a cheap plastic frame. The photograph featured Brenda, his deeply controlling mother, glaring sternly into the camera, while a teenage Connor smiled beside her. Connor heard my footsteps and turned around beaming as if he had just done me a massive favor. "Hey babe, you are home? Perfect timing. Come hold this side of the frame for me, it keeps tilting to the left." I did not move toward the ladder. I just stared at the towering mountain of boxes completely blocking my fireplace. "What exactly is going on here, Connor? Whose boxes are these?" He waved his hand dismissively, climbing down the aluminum steps. "Oh, I meant to text you, but things got crazy. Mom is moving in. I rented a truck and brought all her stuff over while you were at the office today. I figured we could get a head start on unpacking before the rehearsal dinner on Friday." My blood ran ice cold, but my facial expression remained perfectly blank. A financial auditor never shows panic to an adversary. We show precision. "Moving in." I repeated, my voice dangerously calm and steady. "Connor, our wedding is in exactly 3 days. What do you mean she is moving in? For how long? Is her apartment being fumigated?" Connor let out a loud, condescending laugh and walked over to the kitchen island, opening a cold beer. "Fumigated? No, Vanessa. I mean, she is moving in permanently. She is going to live here with us." He took a long sip of his drink and leaned arrogantly against my white quartz countertop, looking entirely too comfortable in a house his name was not on. "Permanently. Without discussing it with me, without even a single phone call. Come on, do not be dramatic." He rolled his eyes, his tone shifting rapidly from cheerful to defensive. "We are about to be husband and wife. Marriage means merging our lives together. What is mine is yours, and what is yours is ours. Family is everything, Vanessa. My mother needs a safe place to stay, and we have 3,000 square feet of empty space. I knew you would understand. It is not like you ever use the guest suite anyway." I looked around my desecrated living room. The sheer audacity of his actions was physically suffocating. He had not just invited his mother to stay for a weekend visit. He had allowed her to invade my private sanctuary, claim my hard-earned space, and erase my presence from my own walls, all without my explicit consent. He walked over and tried to pull me into a tight hug, but I immediately stepped back. His hands fell to his sides, and a flash of genuine irritation crossed his face. He hated when I did not instantly conform to his narrative. "Look!" He sighed heavily, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "She is family. I am not going to leave my own mother out on the street. You make $300,000 a year analyzing numbers. You can afford to be a little generous with your space. Just be welcoming when she gets here, okay?" When she gets here. The words hung heavily in the tense air just as the front door swung open again. A burly delivery man dropped yet another massive cardboard box onto my entryway runner, wiping sweat from his forehead before turning around and walking back out to the rented moving truck. Connor signed a clipboard and closed the door. Before I could demand an explanation, a sharp, familiar voice echoed from the hallway leading to my kitchen. "There is my beautiful daughter-in-law," Brenda announced, stepping into the living room. She looked entirely too comfortable. She was wearing my plush white silk robe, the one I had bought at a luxury boutique in Milan, and holding a crystal wine glass filled to the brim. I recognized the deep ruby color immediately. It was my vintage Pinot Noir, a rare bottle gifted to me by a firm partner, worth easily $800. She took a sloppy gulp, leaving a dark red lipstick stain on the rim. "Brenda," I said, keeping my posture rigid, "why are your belongings in my living room?" She sighed dramatically and collapsed onto my Italian leather sofa, completely ignoring the fact that she was crushing a delicate silk throw pillow. "The bank foreclosed on my house today, Vanessa. The economy is just terrible right now. I lost everything. I have nowhere else to go." I narrowed my eyes. Brenda had lived in a paid-off suburban house for 20 years. Foreclosure meant she had taken out massive secondary loans. My financial auditor brain instantly flagged a dozen inconsistencies. But before I could interrogate her about the missing equity, Connor stepped forward, placing a protective hand on his mother's shoulder. "Mom has been through a traumatic ordeal," he said, looking at me as if I was the villain. "We are going to take care of her. In fact, I have already made the necessary arrangements to make her comfortable here." "Arrangements," I repeated. "What arrangements, Connor?" He puffed out his chest, trying to look authoritative. "I called the travel agent this afternoon. I canceled our honeymoon to the Maldives." The room went dead silent. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline of a terrible joke. The Maldives trip was my dream vacation. I had spent $20,000 of my own savings to book a private overwater villa. It was fully non-refundable. "You did what I asked," my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Connor crossed his arms, looking entirely unapologetic. "I canceled it. We can go to Florida next year or something. Right now, we need that $20,000 to build a proper bedroom extension on the back of the house. The guest suite upstairs has too many stairs for Mom. She needs a ground floor room with an ensuite bathroom. I already have a contractor coming tomorrow morning to knock down the sunroom wall." I felt a physical jolt of pure rage, but I locked it down behind a mask of calm. "You canceled a $20,000 trip that I paid for to use my money to demolish my sunroom to build an extension on my house without asking me." Brenda scoffed loudly from the sofa, taking another generous gulp of my expensive wine. "Oh, stop being so financially selfish, Vanessa. You make $300,000 a year auditing spreadsheets. $20,000 is pocket change to you. My son is trying to be a good man and provide for his family, and you are throwing a fit over a little beach vacation." "Provide for his family?" I asked, turning my gaze back to Connor. "With my money. In my house." Connor's face flushed red. "Marriage is a partnership." He snapped, his voice rising in defense. "You are always holding your paycheck over my head. You have more money than you know what to do with, and my mother is homeless. A good wife would step up. Instead, you are standing here acting like a greedy corporate shark. We are getting married on Saturday. You need to stop acting like everything is yours and start acting like a team player." He took a step closer, pointing a finger at me. I am the man of this house now, and I am making the hard choices. They sat there, mother and son, staring at me with righteous entitlement. They truly believed they had backed me into a corner. They thought that because the wedding was only 3 days away, I would simply swallow my anger, write the checks, and submit to their hostile takeover of my life to avoid the embarrassment of a cancelled wedding. I looked at Connor. I looked at Brenda wearing my robe and drinking my wine. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply nodded slowly, my mind already calculating the precise legal and financial devastation I was about to unleash upon them both. Before I could even process the absolute audacity of their demands, the electronic keypad on my front door beeped loudly, and the heavy oak door swung wide open. It was Megan Connor's 31-year-old sister. She breezed right into my foyer without knocking, holding a bottle of cheap supermarket Prosecco and a plastic grocery bag filled with pink party cups. She did not even look in my direction. Instead, she marched straight past me, her high heels clicking aggressively against my hardwood floors, and threw her arms around Brenda. "Happy move-in day, Mom." Megan squealed, popping the cork on the Prosecco and pouring the bubbling liquid directly into the plastic cups. "I am so glad you are finally out of that depressing old house. This place is going to be so much better for you." Connor grinned broadly and grabbed a cup, tapping it against his sister's glass. "We were just telling Vanessa about the new plans for the house." Megan finally turned to acknowledge me, her eyes sweeping over my tailored worksuit with a mixture of deep jealousy and undisguised disdain. Megan had never worked a corporate job in her life. She was married to Jamal, a brilliant and highly successful African-American real estate attorney who funded her entire lavish lifestyle. Yet Megan constantly acted as if she was the one pulling the financial weight in their relationship. Jamal was a remarkably grounded and sharp man, which made his marriage to a toxic, entitled woman like Megan a complete mystery to me. I knew Jamal secretly despised his wife's family dynamics, frequently choosing to stay late at his law firm just to avoid their constant drama. "Oh, good," Megan said, taking a large sip of her drink. "Because honestly, Vanessa, we need to talk about the sleeping arrangements. Mom cannot be walking up and down these steep stairs every single day. Her knees are practically bone on bone." Connor nodded immediately in agreement. "I know that is why I am hiring the contractor to build the ground floor extension, but it will take a few months to finish the construction." Megan waved her hand dismissively, rolling her eyes. "That is ridiculous. Why wait months and live in a dusty construction zone? Vanessa, you should just give Mom the master suite. It is the only logical solution here." I stood perfectly still in the center of the room, my breathing slow, deliberate, and measured. My master suite took up the entire third floor of the townhouse. It was my ultimate private sanctuary, featuring a massive custom California closet I had designed myself, a freestanding marble soaking tub, and a private balcony with a stunning, unobstructed view of the Chicago skyline. I had paid an interior designer thousands of dollars to perfect every single square inch of that room. "Give her the master suite," I repeated, making sure I heard the sheer absurdity of her demand correctly. "You want me to give up the primary bedroom in the house that I own?" Brenda let out a soft, dramatic sigh, placing her hand over her chest, as if the mere conversation was physically exhausting her frail body. "Oh, Megan, please do not start an argument tonight. You know how Vanessa gets about her expensive things. I do not want to impose on anyone. I will just sleep on the sofa downstairs if I have to. The pain in my joints is unbearable, but I will survive somehow." She was putting on a masterclass in emotional manipulation, playing the frail, accommodating victim while simultaneously staking her aggressive claim. It worked flawlessly on her children. Connor immediately stepped forward, glaring at me defensively. "No one is sleeping on the sofa, Mom. Megan is exactly right. It just makes logistical sense. Vanessa, you are at the office 80 hours a week anyway. You basically only use the bedroom to sleep. We can easily take the guest room on the second floor and Mom can have the master suite. It has the walk-in shower with the built-in bench, which is much safer for her." Megan laughed, a sharp, mocking sound that echoed loudly through my living room. "Honestly, Vanessa, do not be so incredibly materialistic. You constantly boast about being this strong, independent corporate woman, but you are standing here throwing a tantrum over a walk-in closet. Family is more important than your luxury bathtub. You are marrying into this family on Saturday. It is time you start acting like a supportive daughter and stop acting like a greedy landlord. They formed a tight semicircle around me. Connor, Megan, and Brenda. A united front of pure, unadulterated entitlement. They stood right there in the house I bought, drinking the alcohol I paid for, demanding I surrender the very bed I slept in. They were openly mocking my boundaries, completely convinced that my silence was a sign of weakness, shock, and submission. They genuinely thought my refusal to engage in a loud screaming match meant they had won the negotiation. But a financial forensic auditor does not scream at a glaring discrepancy. We observe it, we document it, and we use it to build an airtight, undeniable case. I looked at the three of them, carefully committing this exact moment and their smug expressions to memory. I did not raise my voice. I did not shed a single tear of frustration. I simply offered them a tight, polite smile that completely failed to reach my eyes. I hear everything you are saying, I said smoothly, my tone completely flat and giving absolutely nothing away. I am going to go upstairs and think about the room arrangements. Without waiting for a single response, I turned my back on them and walked calmly toward the staircase. I could hear Megan loudly whispering to Connor about how I was finally learning my proper place, followed closely by the clinking of their plastic cups in celebration. I just kept walking, ascending the stairs to my beautiful master suite, for what would be the very last time. Once inside my master suite, I locked the heavy oak door. I did not cry or pace the floor in a panic. Instead, I walked into my custom closet and pulled down my Prada luggage. Downstairs, I could hear the faint, muffled sounds of Connor, Megan, and Brenda laughing. They were celebrating their hostile takeover, completely unaware that their victory was nothing more than an illusion. I had spent years analyzing corporate fraud. I knew exactly how to dismantle an operation from the inside out, and Connor had just handed me the match to burn his entire life down. I moved with absolute efficiency. I packed a full week of perfectly tailored business suits, silk blouses, and expensive shoes. I opened my hidden floor safe and removed my velvet jewelry boxes, making sure to grab the diamond tennis bracelet I had bought for myself and the vintage emerald ring I had inherited. I left the cheap cubic zirconia engagement ring Connor had given me sitting directly in the center of my vanity. He had claimed it was a rare custom cut, but my jeweler had appraised it at barely $400. I did not need his fake promises, and I certainly did not need his fake diamonds. Next, I stepped into my attached home office. This was the most critical part of my exit. As a financial forensic auditor, my entire life was stored in encrypted data. I opened my desk drawer and retrieved 3 external hard drives. These drives contained all my personal financial records, the deed to the townhouse, the original mortgage payoff statements, and all my investment portfolios. I also grabbed the physical folder containing the wedding vendor contracts. I slipped the drives and the folder into my leather briefcase. Then I systematically wiped the desktop computer logging out of every single account and clearing all saved passwords. By the time I was finished, there was absolutely zero trace of my financial footprint left in that room. I sat on the edge of my bed and waited. I watched the digital clock on my nightstand slowly change. 11 o'clock, 11:30, midnight. The laughter downstairs had long since faded, replaced by the heavy silence of a sleeping house. I stood up, grabbed my suitcase in one hand and my briefcase in the other, and silently made my way down the staircase. The living room was a disaster. Empty Prosecco bottles and plastic cups littered my expensive coffee table. Brenda was snoring loudly from the guest room down the hall, having clearly claimed it for herself. Connor was passed out on my sofa, still wearing his shoes, his mouth hanging open. The sight of him filled me with a profound sense of disgust. How had I ever planned to tether my life, my credit score, and my future to this pathetic excuse for a man? I walked into the kitchen and turned on the small light above the stove. I pulled a sheet of heavy cream-colored stationery from my briefcase and grabbed a pen. I wrote a very simple message on the front. Connor, since you and your mother clearly need this space more than I do, I am removing myself from the premises. Enjoy the house. I placed the pen down. To anyone else, it looked like the dramatic emotional exit of a defeated woman. It looked like a breakup note. But it was not a breakup note. On the back of that expensive piece of stationery printed in crisp, undeniable black ink was a formal 48-hour notice to vacate. It was a legally binding document I had drafted months ago for a commercial property dispute modified perfectly for this exact residential situation. By leaving it in a conspicuous place in the common area, I was establishing the first undeniable step of a legal eviction process. I placed the note directly next to the coffee maker, knowing it would be the first thing Connor saw in the morning. I picked up my bags, walked to the front door, and stepped out into the cool Chicago night air. The lock clicked shut behind me with a heavy, satisfying sound. I loaded my luggage into the spacious trunk of my Porsche SUV, started the engine and drove away from the townhouse without looking back a single time. 20 minutes later, I handed my platinum credit card to the night concierge at the luxurious Waldorf Astoria. He handed me the key card to a stunning luxury corner suite overlooking the lake. As I rode the elevator up to the top floor, a deep, overwhelming sense of peace washed over me. I was not a bride anymore. I was an auditor who had just uncovered a massive liability, and I was about to aggressively balance the books. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my Waldorf Astoria suite, casting a warm glow over the pristine white linens of the king-sized bed. For the first time in months, I woke up feeling completely rested. There was no Connor snoring loudly beside me, no looming anxiety about dealing with Brenda, and absolutely zero regret about walking out of my own home. I picked up the hotel phone and ordered a lavish room service breakfast. Smoked salmon, a pot of premium French press coffee, and fresh berries. I was going to need the fuel. As I sat at the glass dining table overlooking the glittering expanse of Lake Michigan, my personal cell phone began to vibrate violently against the wood. It was barely 7 in the morning, but the screen was already flooded with notifications. Connor was awake. I calmly poured myself a cup of coffee and unlocked the phone, watching the messages roll in one after another. "Where are you?" His first text read, "Sent at 6:45. Did you seriously sleep at a hotel? Grow up, Vanessa." Sent at 6:50. Then at exactly 7:15, the tone of his messages shifted from mild irritation to triumphant arrogance. He had found the stationery I left by the coffee maker. "I just found your dramatic little note," he wrote, "removing yourself from the premises. Really? Are we in a high school soap opera? If you think leaving the house is going to make me beg you to come back, you are completely delusional. My mother needs this house, and I am the man of the family. I am glad you finally realized that," and stepped aside. I took a slow bite of my smoked salmon, savoring the flavor. Connor was so incredibly predictable. His massive ego completely blinded him to detail. I had placed that note face up, expecting him to read the front and feel a surge of victory. But anyone with half a brain or anyone who actually respected me would have picked the heavy cardstock up, felt its weight, and turned it over to see what else might be written on the back. Connor did not turn it over. He saw the words he wanted to see, assumed I was surrendering my $3 million property out of sheer emotional defeat, and left it at that. His texts continued, each one more condescending than the last. "The wedding is still happening on Saturday," he dictated in a long block of text. "We have hundreds of guests flying in, and I am not dealing with the embarrassment of a cancelled event just because you are throwing a childish tantrum over a bedroom. Take a couple of days to cool off at whatever hotel you are hiding in, but you need to be back here by Friday morning to help Mom set up for the rehearsal dinner. And you owe her a massive apology for your hostile attitude last night." He followed that up with one final, utterly oblivious message. "Also, how do you descale the espresso machine? Mom wants a latte and the red light is blinking." I actually laughed out loud in the quiet of my hotel suite. The sheer audacity of this man was almost impressive. He was sitting in my house planning to spend my money on our wedding, demanding I apologize to the woman who stole my robe and asking me for tech support on my $2,000 coffee maker. He truly believed he held all the power. He thought my silence was submission and that my departure was a surrender of assets. He had no idea that the piece of paper he was gloating over was a legally binding document. By acknowledging receipt of the note via text message Connor had just handed me, written time-stamped proof that he had been served with the 48-hour notice to vacate. The legal countdown clock was officially ticking, and he was too busy demanding an apology to hear the alarm bells ringing. I did not reply to any of his texts. Instead, I opened my laptop and connected to the secure hotel network. It was time to start the real work. If Connor wanted to play the role of the dominant provider who made the hard financial choices, I was going to let him experience exactly what that entailed. I pulled up the joint wedding account, the one where I had deposited $80,000 to cover the remaining vendor balances. With 3 simple clicks, I transferred every single cent back into my private individual account. The joint balance now read a beautiful, perfect 0. I took another sip of coffee. The game was officially on. My phone buzzed again this time, with a notification from a newly created group chat. It seemed Megan was awake and the family was ready to launch phase 2 of their psychological attack. But they were bringing cheap Prosecco and emotional manipulation to a legal war, and I was about to show them exactly why you never try to audit an auditor. My phone screen lit up again, pulling me out of my thoughts. Megan had created a new iMessage group chat titled Family First. She had added Connor, Brenda, and myself. I took another sip of my coffee, leaned back in my chair, and watched the digital toxicity unfold in real time. Megan did not waste a single second. Her messages came through in rapid-fire succession, each one dripping with venom and misplaced authority. "I cannot believe you threw a temper tantrum and ran away to a hotel," Megan typed. "You are 33 years old, Vanessa. Act like an adult. Mom was crying all night because she felt unwelcome. You are an absolute narcissist and a terrible partner to my brother." A few seconds later, Brenda sent a message. It was a crying emoji followed by a long, dramatic paragraph. "I just wanted to be close to my son. I never meant to cause trouble. If Vanessa hates me so much, I can go live in a homeless shelter. I do not want to ruin your wedding, Connor." Connor immediately jumped in to defend his mother. "Do not be ridiculous, Mom. You are staying exactly where you are. This is my house too, and I say you stay." I watched the screen, my expression completely blank. Connor had lived with me for a year, but he had never paid a single mortgage payment, property tax bill, or utility invoice. He spent his money on tailored suits, expensive golf clubs, and apparently bailing out his mother. He had absolutely zero legal standing, but his ego convinced him otherwise. Megan chimed back in, officially adopting the role of the family legal expert. "Do not worry about her leaving Connor. Even if she tries to come back and kick you out, she legally cannot do it. You have squatters' rights now, plus you two are getting married on Saturday. In the state of Illinois, that makes the townhouse marital property. You have established residency. You get mail delivered there. The law is completely on your side. If she wants to be an ice queen and abandon her own property, let her. That just means you get to keep the house." I had to suppress a genuine smile. Megan was so confidently incorrect, it was staggering. She was married to a brilliant real estate attorney, but she clearly had never listened to a single word Jamal said about property law. Squatters' rights took years of continuous hostile occupation to establish, not 12 hours. And the concept of marital property did not apply to an asset purchased entirely by one individual years before a marriage even took place, especially when the marriage had not legally occurred yet. They were banking their entire future on internet legal myths and their own unchecked entitlement. Connor replied to the group with a thumbs-up emoji. "Exactly, I know my rights. Vanessa, you can stay at your little hotel until you are ready to come back and act like a normal, respectful wife. Until then, Mom is taking the master bedroom, and the contractor is coming at noon to start knocking down the sunroom wall. That was the breaking point. The mention of demolishing my property was the exact leverage I needed. They were openly admitting to planned property destruction in a written format. I took 2 quick screenshots of the entire conversation and securely uploaded them to my encrypted cloud drive. Their ignorance was their ultimate downfall. It was time to pop their delusional bubble. I tapped the text field and typed a single simple sentence. Read the back of the note. I hit send and placed the phone face down on the glass table. 1 minute passed. Then 2. The rapid-fire notifications completely ceased. The digital silence was deafening, and it was beautiful. I could perfectly picture the scene playing out in my living room. Connor, full of unearned confidence, casually flipping over the heavy piece of stationery he had been mocking all morning. I could picture the smug grin melting off his face as he read the crisp, legally binding terminology printed on the reverse side. It was a formal 48-hour notice to vacate for unauthorized trespassing. It explicitly detailed that anyone remaining on the premises after the deadline would be subject to immediate eviction and arrest by local law enforcement. It also included a strict liability clause holding him financially responsible for any unauthorized alterations to the property, specifically citing construction or demolition. The phone buzzed. It was a private message from Connor completely outside the group chat. "What is this? This is a joke, right? You cannot give me a trespassing notice. I live here. We are getting married in 3 days." I did not answer. Let him panic. Let him realize that the woman he thought he could easily manipulate had just trapped him in a legally binding snare. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked over to the closet to select my sharpest business suit. I had a busy day ahead of me. I needed to dig deeper into Brenda's supposed foreclosure, and I needed to make a very important phone call to the only intelligent person in that family, Jamal. I arrived at my firm in downtown Chicago just before 9. In my corner office, I fired up my monitors. As a financial forensic auditor, my career was built on finding the truth beneath layers of deceit. Numbers do not lie, they do not gaslight you, and they certainly do not demand your master bedroom. They just sit there waiting to be illuminated. I locked my heavy door, pulled up our proprietary investigative software, and typed in Brenda's legal name and social security number. It was time to dissect this tragic foreclosure story. According to Brenda, the terrible economy had swallowed her suburban home. But within 3 minutes of accessing public property records, her fabricated narrative completely unraveled. Her house had been fully paid off 5 years ago. She had 0 mortgage debt. However, exactly 18 months ago, Brenda took out a massive cash-out refinance. She extracted $200,000 in pure equity from her home. I leaned closer to the monitor, my eyes scanning the digital ledger. People who own their homes outright do not suddenly leverage them to the maximum limit unless they are desperate for liquid cash. I ran a skip trace on the disbursement of those funds. The paper trail did not lead to medical bills for Brenda. The money went straight into a checking account belonging exclusively to Connor. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I pivoted the forensic investigation directly onto my future husband. I ran a comprehensive soft pull on his credit profile and cross-referenced it with his hidden banking histories. What I found was a complete financial massacre. Connor had always projected the flawless image of a highly successful sales director. He wore Tom Ford suits and constantly bragged about his massive quarterly bonuses. The reality was a devastating illusion. Connor was drowning in predatory high-interest debt. His credit cards were completely maxed out. He had 3 separate personal loans sitting in default status. But the most alarming discovery was a continuous series of massive wire transfers to offshore cryptocurrency exchanges and unregulated trading platforms. He was not just terrible with money. He was a degenerate gambler, heavily disguised as a respectable corporate professional. I meticulously tracked the timeline. 18 months ago, Connor's high-risk trading accounts completely tanked. Facing total financial ruin, he manipulated his aging mother into mortgaging her paid-off house to bail him out. He took her $200,000 and threw it right back into the exact same volatile markets, desperately trying to win back his massive losses, and he predictably lost it all over again. When the refinance money finally evaporated, Brenda could no longer make the expensive new monthly mortgage payments. The bank initiated formal foreclosure proceedings exactly 6 months ago. They had been actively hiding this catastrophic failure from me our entire engagement. The pieces of their toxic puzzle snapped together with terrifying, undeniable clarity. Connor had not proposed to me because he loved me or wanted to build a genuine life together. He proposed because his mother was about to be entirely homeless, his credit score was completely destroyed, and his aggressive creditors were circling like hungry sharks. He desperately needed a permanent lifeline. He looked at my pristine credit score, my savings account, and my paid-off luxury townhouse and saw a walking bailout. The absolute audacity of his plan was genuinely breathtaking. He planned to cancel the honeymoon I paid for just to build a room for his mother, whose homelessness he directly caused. He wanted to force me into a marriage where my hard-earned assets would become legally intertwined with his massive hidden liabilities. He moved his mother into my home so she could live rent-free on my dime for the rest of her life. They were financial parasites, and I was the designated wealthy host. I sat back in my leather chair, the cold glow of the monitors reflecting in my eyes. I did not shed a single emotional tear for the sudden death of my relationship. The man I thought I was going to marry simply did not exist. He was a carefully constructed facade designed entirely to secure financial immunity. I picked up my cell phone from the desk. The only person in that entire family who possessed a single shred of integrity or true intelligence was Jamal. As a brilliant real estate attorney, Jamal understood the complex intricacies of property law and financial liability better than absolutely anyone I knew. More importantly, I knew Jamal secretly despised Connor and the manipulative, entitled culture of his wife's toxic family. I scrolled through my contacts, found his private cell number, and pressed dial. It was time to forge a secret alliance and turn my defensive posture into a devastating offensive strike. Jamal answered on the second ring. His voice was hushed but sharp, a stark contrast to the loud tones his wife Megan constantly used. I asked if he had time for a quick coffee near his firm. He did not hesitate. He named a quiet cafe located deep in the financial district far away from the suburban boutiques Megan frequented. 10 minutes later, I walked into the dimly lit cafe and spotted him sitting in a back corner booth. Jamal was a tall, impeccably dressed black man with a commanding presence. He wore a custom-tailored navy suit that screamed equity partner, yet his eyes carried the distinct exhaustion of a man who had spent too many years dealing with irrational people. As I slid into the leather booth across from him, he did not offer a fake smile. He just pushed a steaming cup of black coffee across the table toward me and sighed heavily. "I saw the group chat this morning," Jamal said, his voice laced with pure disdain. "I apologize for my wife. Megan has completely lost her grip on reality, and her mother and brother are happily fueling her delusions. She actually sat at our kitchen table this morning drinking a $12 juice paid for by my credit card and told me that Connor had finally established his dominance in your relationship. I tried to explain, squatter rights do not activate overnight." I took a slow sip of the coffee. "You never need to apologize to me for her behavior, Jamal. We both know you are the only one in that family who actually understands how the real world operates. That is exactly why I called you today." Jamal leaned forward, resting his elbows on the polished wooden table. He reached into his structured leather briefcase. He pulled out a thick manila folder and slid it across the table until it rested right in front of me. "I am a senior real estate attorney, Vanessa. I deal with complex property disputes and foreclosures all day." When Brenda suddenly announced she lost a house she had owned outright for 2 decades, I knew something was fundamentally wrong. I opened the folder. Inside was a highly confidential credit and asset report. It was even more comprehensive than the digital footprint I uncovered in my office. It included stamped bank statements, signed loan applications, and default notices that painted a picture of absolute financial ruin. Jamal tapped a finger on the top page, his jaw clenching. Connor did not just drain his mother's home equity to cover his bad trades. He took out multiple predatory loans, using her address as collateral. And when margin calls hit, he started shifting debt between temporary accounts. I watched his face darken with controlled anger. He has been bleeding money through unregulated platforms for over a year. Brenda knew absolutely everything. She willingly sacrificed her financial security to protect him. I scanned the highlighted documents, my auditor brain processing the terrifying numbers with cold precision. They want my townhouse, Jamal. Connor sent me a message claiming the property is legally his because we are supposed to get married on Saturday. He thinks because he moved boxes into my living room he has established residency. Jamal let out a short, bitter laugh. He genuinely thinks he can claim marital property on a premium premarital asset just because he slept on your couch. The arrogance is staggering. He looked at me, his expression hardening. Vanessa. I spent the last 5 years watching that family manipulate and gaslight their way through life. I watched Megan drain my bank accounts to maintain her fake rich lifestyle while she criticizes my career. I am entirely done playing their games. I am filing for legal separation this week, and I will make sure Connor and Brenda get nothing. I looked up from the stacks of financial devastation meeting his eyes. A silent understanding passed between us. We were two successful adults trapped in the chaotic orbit of financial parasites. We were no longer victims. We were the professionals, and we were taking control. So what is our first move? Jamal leaned back in his seat, a cold, calculated smile finally appearing on his handsome face. You gave him a formal 48-hour notice to vacate. That was a brilliant preliminary step to establish illegal trespassing. But if you truly want to destroy his leverage completely and protect your assets permanently, we need to completely sever his connection to that property before Saturday. He thinks he is marrying a landlord. We need to make sure he is trespassing on corporate property instead. I know exactly how to execute that flawless transaction today. I looked at Jamal, intrigued by the cold confidence in his voice. Selling the townhouse to his corporate entity was a brilliant maneuver, but I knew Jamal well enough to recognize the weight of his gaze. He was holding something back. The property transfer was just the beginning of his strategy. He reached back into his structured leather briefcase and pulled out one final document. It had been kept deliberately separate from the thick stack of financial ruin he had already shown me. He slid it across the polished wooden table, keeping it face down. Before we even begin to discuss the details of the property transfer, Jamal said, his tone dropping an octave to a deeply serious, hushed whisper. You need to see this. I found it buried deep in a secondary credit sweep that I ran late last night. Connor did not just drain his mother of her life savings. He got desperate. I slowly flipped the heavy piece of paper over on the table. It was a formal promissory note for an unsecured personal loan. The principal amount was staggering, $150,000. The lender was a notorious high-interest credit firm known for predatory lending tactics and aggressive collection protocols. I scanned the borrower details rapidly. Connor's name was listed as the primary account holder, but right below it, in the section strictly reserved for the financial guarantor, was my legal name. My blood instantly ran completely cold in my veins. I stared at the signature line at the bottom of the page. There, written in bright blue ink, was a near-perfect replica of my signature. It was flawless enough to pass a casual, hurried inspection by an underpaid loan officer. But as a financial auditor who analyzed complex legal documents for a living, I immediately spotted the glaring discrepancies. I saw the incorrect pressure points, the wrong slant on the vowels, and the slight unnatural hesitation in the loop of the first letter. He deliberately forged my signature. I whispered, the sheer magnitude of the betrayal washing over me in a wave of icy clarity. 3 months ago, Jamal confirmed, his face a mask of controlled disgust. He needed a massive influx of liquid cash to cover a catastrophic margin call on a volatile cryptocurrency trade. His personal credit was already radioactive. He knew the only way an institution would ever hand him $150,000 was if a guarantor with an 800-plus credit score backed the note. He stole your financial identity, Vanessa. He committed felony fraud. Connor had crossed the line from a toxic entitled partner to a literal criminal. He had secretly chained me to a six-figure debt with an interest rate so astronomically high it would compound into total ruin within a single year. The loan is currently 30 days past due. Jamal continued tapping the paper. The lender is about to initiate aggressive collection protocols. If they report this default to the major credit bureaus, your pristine credit score will be obliterated. But Jamal leaned forward, his eyes burning with a fierce strategic fire. This is also the exact weapon we need to completely destroy him. I looked up from the forged document. Explain. I am a senior partner at my firm. Jamal stated, his voice ringing with absolute authority. I am officially offering you my full legal services completely off the books. We are going to dismantle Connor and Brenda so thoroughly that they will never recover, and we are going to do it without breaking a single law. If you report this to the police right now, he gets arrested, but the investigation takes months. My credit still takes a temporary hit while the fraud department sorts it out. A simple arrest is far too easy for him. He gets to cry and play the victim for his mother. We do not want a messy, prolonged arrest, Vanessa. We want total financial annihilation. We want him completely trapped with zero escape routes. My mind raced through the legal architecture of our revenge. I have an anonymous shell company, I said slowly, the pieces falling perfectly into place. An LLC I set up last year for some private commercial investments. My name is nowhere on the public incorporation documents. Jamal smiled a genuine, terrifying smile. Exactly. You use your corporate contacts to have that LLC purchase this defaulted debt directly from the predatory lender. They will sell it to you for pennies on the dollar just to clear it off their books. You become his sole creditor. You own him. We sat together in the quiet cafe, meticulously drafting our ironclad blueprint. Connor thought he secured a wealthy wife. Instead, he handed us the weapon to destroy him. I returned to my office just after the lunch hour, feeling a profound sense of clarity. The anxiety that had plagued me the night before was completely gone, replaced by the cold mechanical precision of an auditor executing a flawless operation. I walked through the glass doors of my firm, nodding politely to the receptionist, and made my way toward my corner office. My mind was already calculating the complex logistics of the debt acquisition through my anonymous shell company. But as I rounded the corner past the glass-walled conference rooms, my train of thought came to a screeching halt. Standing right in the middle of the main corporate bullpen, surrounded by three of my junior analysts, was Connor. He was wearing his best navy suit, holding an obnoxiously large bouquet of red roses, and flashing his signature charismatic smile. He was actively holding court, telling some exaggerated self-deprecating story that had my colleagues laughing politely. When he saw me approach, his face lit up with an expertly crafted expression of devoted relief. He walked straight toward me, closing the distance before I could retreat to the safety of my office, and practically shoved the heavy bouquet into my arms. "There she is," he announced loudly, making sure his voice carried across the entire open floor plan. "The most beautiful, overworked bride in Chicago. I know you are incredibly stressed about the wedding this Saturday, babe. I know the planning has you completely overwhelmed. I just wanted to bring you a little surprise to brighten your day and remind you that we are a team." My colleagues let out a collective sympathetic sound. It was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. By showing up unannounced with flowers and loudly proclaiming my extreme stress levels to my professional peers, he was establishing a public narrative. If I reacted with anger, demanded he leave, or confronted him about his criminal forgery, I would look like the hysterical, ungrateful bride suffering from severe pre-wedding jitters. He was weaponizing my professional environment, using peer pressure and public perception to force me into silent submission. I looked down at the velvet red roses, feeling a wave of absolute revulsion wash over me, but I kept my facial expression perfectly pleasant and entirely unbothered. "Connor," I said, keeping my voice low, steady, and measured. "What an unexpected surprise. Let us step into my office so we do not disrupt the floor." I turned on my heel and walked into my workspace, not checking to see if he was following. He stepped inside and closed the heavy oak door behind us. The instant the latch clicked into place, he completely dropped the cheerful fiancé act. The charismatic smile vanished from his face, replaced by a hard, demanding glare that revealed his true intentions. He did not bother apologizing for the aggressive texts he had sent me that morning. He did not ask how I was doing. Instead, he reached into the inner breast pocket of his tailored jacket and pulled out a folded legal document. "I brought this for you to sign," he said, tossing the paper carelessly onto my polished mahogany desk. "Since you are obviously having a massive panic attack about the logistics of the wedding and Mom moving in, I took the liberty of solving the problem for you." I placed the heavy bouquet of roses on a side table and picked up the paper. I did not even need to read the fine print to know what it was. It was a standard quitclaim deed. He had downloaded a generic legal template from the internet and filled it out by hand. The document explicitly transferred ownership of my luxury townhouse from my sole individual name into a joint tenancy with rights of survivorship. He wanted me to legally gift him half of my $3 million property right there in my office, exactly 3 days before our wedding. "Sign it," Connor demanded, leaning forward and placing both hands flat on my desk to physically intimidate me. "It is the only way to prove you are actually committed to this family. You abandoned me and my mother last night over a simple room arrangement. You made her cry, Vanessa. If you want this wedding to happen on Saturday, you need to sign that paper right now to show me you are financially all in. Otherwise, I am walking away." He was issuing a definitive ultimatum, completely unaware that he had absolutely zero leverage left to pull. He genuinely thought the threat of a canceled wedding would terrify me into signing away my life. He thought I was a desperate woman craving his validation. But as I looked at the crude internet-printed land grab attempt, I only saw the desperate flailing of a drowning man trying to secure a life raft before his massive hidden debts pulled him under. I did not rip the paper up. I did not throw the roses in the trash. I looked him dead in the eye and let out a soft, defeated sigh, playing the exact submissive role he fully expected me to play. "You are right, Connor," I murmured carefully, folding the quitclaim deed and slipping it securely into my top desk drawer. "I have just been so overwhelmed with the caterers. I completely overreacted last night. Let us go get some lunch, just the two of us, and we can talk about the deed." We took the sleek glass elevator down to the main corporate lobby in absolute silence. Connor was practically radiating smug satisfaction. He had marched into my professional territory, caused a scene, and in his mind successfully bullied me into total submission. We walked 2 blocks to a high-end Italian bistro we often visited for our anniversary. The hostess seated us at a quiet corner table, exactly the kind of private setting I needed to execute my digital massacre. As soon as the waiter poured our sparkling water, Connor launched into a lengthy, uninterrupted monologue about his grand vision for my house. He did not ask how my morning was. He did not ask if I was still feeling overwhelmed. Instead, he excitedly detailed the exact shade of beige his mother had selected for the new ground floor extension. "Mom was thinking we should rip out the custom shelving in your home office too," he said casually, picking up a piece of artisan bread. "She has this massive collection of vintage porcelain dolls and they need a proper display case. You can just put your desk in the corner of the basement. It will be quieter for your conference calls down there anyway." I offered him a soft, compliant smile, resting my left elbow on the table while my right hand slipped quietly into my designer handbag, resting on the empty chair beside me. "That sounds like a very practical solution, Connor." Under the cover of the heavy linen tablecloth, I unlocked my smartphone using facial recognition. I opened my primary banking application. The interface was clean, familiar, and highly responsive. While Connor enthusiastically described the demolition of my sunroom, my thumb navigated to the authorized user management portal. Connor currently held 3 secondary credit cards linked directly to my platinum accounts. These were the cards he used to buy his tailored suits, his expensive golf club memberships, and the rounds of expensive scotch he loved to buy for his friends to maintain his fake wealthy persona. I tapped the glowing screen once. The first card, a high-limit luxury travel rewards account, was instantly and permanently suspended. I am also going to hire a landscaper to tear up those rose bushes in the backyard. Connor continued, completely oblivious to his impending financial doom. Mom is highly allergic to bees, and we cannot risk her getting stung when she is relaxing on the patio. I nodded enthusiastically. Good idea. Safety first. My thumb tapped the screen twice more. The second card, a premium dining card, and the third card, a general spending account, were both permanently frozen. A small green checkmark appeared on my screen, confirming that his secondary access to my credit lines was officially terminated. If he tried to buy so much as a pack of gum with those cards, they would decline immediately. Next, I navigated to the joint checking account we had opened specifically to manage the day-to-day expenses of our shared life. I had already emptied the massive wedding fund earlier that morning from my hotel suite, but this account still held $20,000 of my personal income money meant for our upcoming property tax bill. He took a large bite of his steak tartare. So about the quitclaim deed. I want to get that notarized by tomorrow afternoon. We can drop it off at the county clerk office before the rehearsal dinner. It is just a formality, babe, but it will make Mom feel so much more secure knowing this is a true family home. With a final tap, I transferred the entire $20,000 balance into my highly secure individual offshore savings account. The joint ledger instantly updated to read $0.00. I was methodically cutting off every single financial artery that kept his extravagant lifestyle alive. Absolutely, I replied smoothly, looking him right in the eye as the transfer confirmation email vibrated against my leg. I just need to review a few minor clauses with my attorney to make sure the tax implications are correct, and then we can finalize it. Connor beamed, completely falling for the lie. He reached across the table and patted my hand patronizingly. See? I told you everything would work out once you stopped fighting me. You just need to trust my leadership. I am building a future for us. I smiled back, a genuine, terrifying smile that he completely misinterpreted as affection. You are definitely building something, Connor. I cannot wait to see how it all turns out on Saturday. I smoothly slid my phone back into my handbag and picked up my silver fork. The trap was perfectly set, the accounts were drained, and the cards were dead. I just had to patiently wait for the spectacular collapse. I left Connor to finish his espresso and bask in his fabricated victory, walking back to my corporate office. The lunch had been a truly massive success. His arrogant monologue confirmed he saw me merely as a wealthy obstacle to manage. As I stepped into the elevator, I texted Jamal. The cards are dead. The joint account is 0. Proceeding with phase 2. Jamal replied almost instantly with a single checkmark emoji. The legal machinery was officially in motion. I walked past the bullpen of junior analysts, ignoring the obnoxious red roses Connor had left, and locked myself inside my office. I sat at my mahogany desk, woke up my monitors, and opened a secure communication portal. It was time to resurrect Apex Capital Management, the anonymous limited liability company I had established 2 years ago for discrete commercial real estate investments. My name did not appear anywhere on the public incorporation filings. To the outside world, Apex Capital was just another faceless corporate entity registered to a registered agent service in Delaware. I pulled up the credit report Jamal provided and found the contact information for the predatory lender holding Connor's defaulted note. They were a notorious firm operating out of Nevada, known for issuing high-risk unsecured personal loans with borderline extortionate interest rates. They were aggressive, but they were also highly motivated by immediate liquidity. Debt that was 30 days past due, with a forged guarantor signature, was a massive liability on their books. They knew they would spend years in expensive litigation trying to collect. I knew they would be eager to offload the toxic asset for immediate cash. I bypassed their customer service lines and dialed the direct extension for their institutional portfolio manager. When a gruff voice answered, I introduced myself not as Vanessa, but as a senior acquisitions director for Apex Capital Management. I spoke in the clipped, authoritative tone of a corporate shark. I am calling regarding an unsecured personal loan currently in default status within your retail portfolio, I stated smoothly, reading Connor's account number from the screen. We specialize in acquiring distressed debt. I am authorized to make a one-time immediate cash offer to purchase the entire note, including all associated collection rights and original documentation. The portfolio manager hesitated, typing rapidly on his end. He pulled up the file and immediately noted the high principal balance of $150,000. He tried to play hardball, insisting that they were preparing to initiate aggressive litigation against the guarantor. I let out a soft, dismissive laugh. We both know the guarantor's signature on that file is highly contested and likely fraudulent. If you take this to court, it will be tied up in forensic handwriting analysis for 2 years, and you will rack up $50,000 in legal fees just to potentially lose the case. You have a highly toxic asset. Apex Capital is offering to wire you $35,000 in pure, non-refundable cash within the next 10 minutes. You clear the bad debt off your quarterly ledger today, and we assume 100% of the collection risk. Take it or leave it. Silence stretched over the phone line for exactly 20 seconds. The math was undeniably in my favor. Getting $35,000 in liquid cash for a fraudulent defaulted loan was a massive win for a predatory lender. Send over the acquisition contract, he finally grumbled. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Within minutes, the digital paperwork was executed. Using the corporate funds residing in the Apex Capital business account, I wired exactly $35,000 to the Nevada lender. In return, a secure, encrypted file drop arrived in my inbox. I downloaded the package and opened the primary document. It was the original legally binding promissory note containing Connor's signature and the sloppy forgery of my own. But at the bottom of the document, a new addendum had been officially attached. It certified the complete transfer of ownership rights and collection authority to Apex Capital Management. I leaned back in my leather chair, a cold wave of absolute power washing over me. The entire transaction was flawless. Connor no longer owed a faceless Nevada corporation. He now owed me. I was now legally his sole debt collector, holding an ironclad promissory note that tied him directly to felony fraud. I had effectively purchased his entire financial future for pennies on the dollar, and he had absolutely no idea the guillotine was already suspended directly above his neck. I checked my desk clock. It was 2 in the afternoon. I picked up my briefcase, placed the freshly printed loan acquisition documents inside, and headed for the door. It was finally time to meet Jamal and sell a house. I walked into the sleek, marble-floored lobby of Jamal's downtown law firm. The massive space screamed quiet money, featuring dark wood paneling and expansive floor-to-ceiling windows with unobstructed views of the Chicago River. The front receptionist recognized me immediately and directed me to a private glass-walled conference room located at the very end of the main corridor. Jamal was already waiting inside. Spread across the massive mahogany table were stacks of complex legal documents, all neatly organized and meticulously flagged with bright yellow signature tabs. "You got the loan?" Jamal asked, turning around as I closed the heavy glass door securely behind me. "I own him," I replied, setting my leather briefcase on the table and pulling out the promissory note transfer I had just acquired. Apex Capital Management is now his sole creditor. The trap on the debt is perfectly set. Now let us take the house. Jamal smiled, a sharp, predatory grin that perfectly matched my own calculated energy. He gestured to the extensive paperwork laid out on the table. "I expedited the title search this morning and drafted a commercial purchase agreement. My firm's private real estate holding company, Zenith Property Management, will purchase the townhouse from you directly today. Since the property was purchased entirely by you prior to the relationship, and you reside in a state that firmly recognizes separate property before marriage, Connor has absolutely zero legal standing to contest this commercial sale. That pathetic quitclaim deed he tried to force you to sign this morning means absolutely nothing. I sat down in the plush leather chair and picked up the heavy fountain pen Jamal offered. He genuinely believes he established legal residency by moving his mother's cardboard boxes into my living room yesterday. Jamal let out a cynical, humorless laugh. Residency requires a formal lease agreement payment of monthly rent or a legally recognized prolonged period of established occupation. He has absolutely none of those things. More importantly, he was explicitly served a 48-hour notice to vacate last night. By selling the property today to a corporate entity, we are actively stripping away any remaining protection he might try to falsely claim under domestic or family housing laws. Zenith Property Management does not have a domestic relationship with Connor or Brenda. To my company, they are simply unauthorized squatters occupying a high-value commercial asset. I flipped to the first page of the thick contract. The purchase price was listed at exactly fair market value, protecting the transaction from any future legal scrutiny. An instant cash transaction, I noted carefully, reviewing the routing numbers for the designated wire transfer. Exactly, Jamal confirmed, leaning his hands on the table. The funds will clear into your secure offshore account within the hour. The deed will be electronically recorded with the county clerk by the end of the business day. The moment that digital stamp hits the registry, your townhouse officially ceases to be yours. It becomes private corporate property. I began signing my name on the designated lines. My signature was precise, fluid, and nothing like the sloppy, desperate forgery Connor had used to steal $150,000. With every stroke of the pen, I was severing the invisible financial chains they had arrogantly tried to wrap around my life. I was not just selling a piece of luxury real estate. I was selling the entire battleground. What happens when the 48 hours expire tomorrow night? I asked, handing the fully signed contract back to Jamal. That is the beautiful part, Jamal said, organizing the executed paperwork into a neat, perfectly aligned stack. Since the property is now commercially owned and actively slated for corporate redevelopment, standard residential eviction timelines do not apply in the same way. We do not have to wait months for a backed-up housing court date. As the legal representative for Zenith Property Management, I will dispatch a highly trained private security team to remove unauthorized trespassers from our corporate asset. We will hit them right when they think they have won everything. I leaned back, feeling a profound sense of professional satisfaction. Connor and Brenda were currently sitting in the living room, drinking my expensive wine, completely oblivious to the fact that the floor beneath their feet had just been legally pulled out from under them. They thought they had successfully bullied a stressed bride into giving them a multi-million-dollar house. They had no idea they were now trespassing on property owned by a ruthless commercial conglomerate run by the very man they constantly disrespected. Megan called me twice while you were on your way over, Jamal mentioned, casually checking his vibrating phone. She wanted my credit card details to book a luxury spa package for Brenda tomorrow to celebrate their big victory. I froze the card and told her I was in back-to-back meetings. They are going to explode when they realize you are the architect of their eviction, I said, a genuine smile forming on my face. I cannot wait to see the look on my wife's face when I serve her with divorce papers right after the security team throws her mother's boxes out onto the street, Jamal replied smoothly. They wanted to play corporate Monopoly with real people's lives. We are just finishing the game. We shook hands firmly across the polished table. The transaction was fully complete. I was a free woman with millions in liquid cash, holding a catastrophic weapon of debt, and Connor was nothing more than a trespasser, counting down the final hours to his own destruction. Now that the property was handled, I only had one final logistical loose end to tie up. It was time to call the event coordinator at the Four Seasons. I stepped out of the law firm and into the bustling Chicago afternoon, the crisp air feeling remarkably refreshing against my skin. I slid into the driver's seat of my Porsche, but I did not start the engine right away. The property sale was a masterpiece, but the townhouse was only the preliminary battlefield. The Four Seasons Hotel was the execution chamber. I pulled up the contact profile for Madeline, the senior event director at the luxury venue, and pressed the call button. Madeline answered on the second ring, her voice dripping with the practiced warmth strictly reserved for high-paying clients. She immediately asked how the final week of wedding preparations was going, fully expecting to soothe a frantic bride. "I am not calling to complain about the floral arrangements, Madeline," I said smoothly, my voice completely devoid of any bridal anxiety. "I am calling to make a series of sweeping, non-negotiable modifications to the master contract for this Saturday." I could hear the slight rustle of papers through the speaker as Madeleine quickly adjusted her tone to match my absolute seriousness. "Of course, Vanessa. What kind of changes are we discussing? If you are looking to cancel, I must remind you that we are within the 72-hour window, which triggers a 50% non-refundable penalty clause." I smiled. "I have absolutely no intention of canceling. The event is still moving forward, but the nature of the gathering is changing entirely. First, I need to restructure the primary billing authorization." When we first began planning, Connor desperately wanted to play the role of the wealthy provider. To feed his massive ego, I allowed him to complete the digital onboarding forms. He eagerly checked the boxes and submitted his legally binding electronic signature to act as an authorized account manager, even though my credit card was the one actually on file for the heavily expensive deposit. It was a classic Connor move. All of the perceived authority, with absolutely none of the actual financial responsibility. But his arrogant desire to look important had just handed me the ultimate loophole. "I am transferring the remaining balance of $100,000 exclusively to Connor," I instructed. "You have his verified electronic signature on the master file establishing him as a primary authorized signer. Remove my platinum card from your system immediately and place the entire financial liability onto his profile. From this exact moment forward, I am entirely removed from the billing equation." Madeline typed rapidly on her keyboard. The digital transfer was seamless and completely legal under the hotel corporate policies. "Done," she confirmed. "His profile is now the sole target for the final invoice." "What about the event itself?" "Cancel the string quartet, the 10-tier wedding cake, and the white chiffon drapery," I ordered, my voice crisp and mechanical. "I want the grand ballroom completely stripped of all romantic aesthetics. Instead, you are going to set the room up for a corporate financial seminar. I need rows of standard conference chairs facing a raised stage. I want a heavy wooden podium, a single microphone, and the largest high-definition projector screen you have available, placed directly in the center of the room." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "A corporate seminar," Madeline repeated clearly, trying to process the massive pivot. "But what about the catering? We have a 5-course plated dinner prepared for 200 guests. Keep the food?" I replied without missing a beat. "But change the service from a seated romantic dinner to a standard corporate buffet line, and keep the premium open bar fully stocked. His family loves to drink expensive liquor, and I want them to run up the highest possible tab on his dime. Let them celebrate." I could hear the faint click of Madeline Mouse as she updated the massive event ledger. She was a professional who had likely seen 100 weddings fall apart, but she had never seen a bride execute a corporate takeover of her own reception. "There is one final change," I said, leaning back against the leather headrest of my car. "You need to officially rename the event on the hotel marquee and all digital display boards. It is no longer the wedding of Vanessa and Connor. You will title the event Apex Capital Management Risk and Liability Seminar. I will make the adjustments immediately," Madeline said, her voice filled with deep professional respect. "The ballroom will be ready for your corporate presentation on Saturday morning." I ended the call and tossed my phone onto the passenger seat. The final trap was flawlessly set. I had legally shifted a six-figure luxury invoice onto a man who was already drowning in predatory debt. He thought he was walking into a lavish wedding funded by my hard work. Instead, he was walking into a corporate boardroom where his entire toxic life would be forensically dissected and destroyed on a massive projector screen. I started my car, the powerful roar of the engine matching the energy in my veins. The preparations were complete. Now all I had to do was wait for the parasites to celebrate their imaginary victory. I navigated the bustling Chicago afternoon traffic with a steady, relaxed grip on the leather steering wheel of my Porsche. The heavy weight that had been pressing down on my chest for the past 24 hours was completely gone, replaced by the thrilling electric current of total control. I pulled into the private underground parking garage of the Waldorf Astoria, handed my keys to the valet, and took the private elevator directly up to my corner suite. Back in the absolute quiet of my room, I ordered a light dinner from room service and poured myself a tall glass of sparkling water. I opened my laptop to review the finalized commercial purchase agreement Jamal had just emailed over. The digital stamp from the county clerk was right there in the top right corner. The property transfer was officially recorded. Out of pure curiosity, I picked up my smartphone and opened my encrypted smart home security application. When Connor and Brenda had invaded my townhouse, they were so blinded by their own entitlement that they completely forgot I was the primary network administrator. They had no idea I had discrete, high-definition security cameras installed in the main living areas, complete with crystal-clear audio receivers. I had initially installed them to monitor my expensive artwork while traveling, but now they served a much more entertaining purpose. I tapped the screen and pulled up the live video feed of my kitchen. The scene playing out on the high-resolution display was a masterpiece of unearned arrogance. Exactly 24 hours remained until they were supposed to walk down the aisle, and the parasites were in full celebration mode. Connor, Brenda, and Megan were gathered around my pristine marble island, leaving wet ring marks on the stone. They had cracked open a rare bottle of Dom Perignon I had been saving for a major corporate milestone. Megan was sitting on one of the bar stools, kicking her feet back and forth, holding up her crystal glass for Connor to refill. To the new man of the house, she cheered loudly, her voice slightly slurred. "I cannot believe you actually pulled it off, Connor. I thought she was going to fight you tooth and nail over this place. She has always been so obsessed with her money." Connor leaned against the counter, looking incredibly smug in his wrinkled dress shirt. "You just have to know how to handle women like Vanessa. They act tough in the boardroom, but at the end of the day, they are terrified of ending up alone. Once I called her bluff and told her I was willing to walk away from the wedding, she completely folded. She agreed to everything at lunch today. She is practically begging to keep me." He took a triumphant sip from his glass, acting as if he had just conquered a small country instead of manipulating his fiancé. Brenda clapped her hands together in absolute delight. "My brilliant son. I knew you would tame that corporate attitude of hers. She just needed a strong man to put her in her proper place. Did she sign the deed transfer yet?" She took it to her office to have her lawyers look it over, but she promised it will be finalized by tomorrow. Connor lied smoothly, puffing up his chest to look important in front of his mother and sister. "It is just a formality at this point. The house is ours." Megan laughed, a sharp, grating sound that echoed loudly through the microphone. "Well, you need to make sure she pays to replace that ugly kitchen backsplash next. If I am going to come over here for Sunday dinners, I do not want to look at those dark green tiles. And Mom, we need to completely empty out her closet upstairs so you can start moving your clothes in." "Oh, definitely," Brenda agreed, taking a large gulp of the expensive champagne. "I will have the contractor tear out those built-in shelves tomorrow, while you two are at the rehearsal dinner. I need more space for my shoe collection." I sat on my plush hotel bed watching them plot the destruction of a house they did not even legally occupy. It was fascinating to observe their shared delusion. They were drinking my stolen wine, standing on floors owned by Zenith Property Management, and spending imaginary equity from a deed that was already officially transferred to a commercial conglomerate. "We should throw a massive housewarming party next month," Connor announced, tossing a greasy pizza box directly onto my countertops. "Invite the whole sales team. Let them see how well I am doing." I watched them toast to their fake victory one last time before calmly closing the application. I did not need to hear any more. I closed the application fully intending to order dessert and enjoy the quiet evening. But less than 10 minutes later, a specialized push notification illuminated my phone screen. Motion detected in the third-floor master suite. I tapped the alert, bringing up the night vision feed from the hidden camera tucked inside the crown molding. The heavy oak door creaked open and Megan slipped inside. She was still holding her plastic cup of champagne, her heels discarded downstairs so she could move silently across the floors. She pulled her smartphone out of her pocket and dialed a number, instantly putting it on speaker. "Yeah, I am in her room right now," Megan whispered loudly to whoever was on the other line. "I am telling you, this custom silk gown she bought for the reception is absolutely insane. It cost her $15,000. Since Jamal froze my credit cards this afternoon for no reason, I have absolutely nothing new to wear to the prestigious charity gala tonight. I am absolutely borrowing her dress. She will not even notice it is missing until tomorrow morning, and by then Connor will have her completely under his thumb anyway. If she complains, I will just say I needed it for family representation." I watched as she walked across the plush carpet toward my massive California closet. She aggressively yanked the heavy doors open, fully expecting to find a treasure trove of designer gowns, luxury handbags, and rows of expensive shoes. Instead, she was met with absolute hollow darkness where my entire wardrobe used to be. Megan froze. She flipped the closet switch. The bright lighting flooded the space, illuminating dozens of bare wooden hangers. Every tailored suit, every silk blouse, every pair of Prada heels, and most importantly, my custom $15,000 dress was completely gone. The velvet-lined jewelry drawers were empty. The floor safe was entirely vacant. "What the hell?" Megan stammered, dropping her plastic cup in absolute shock. The remaining champagne spilled across the custom carpet, soaking deeply into the expensive fibers. "Wait. Where is her stuff?" She sprinted over to the vanity. My makeup organizers were empty. She ripped open the bathroom drawers. Bare. The entire third floor had been systematically stripped of any trace of my existence. She realized this was not a woman throwing a temper tantrum, this was a calculated extraction. But instead of warning Connor, her narcissistic panic took over. She needed that dress for her gala, furious that I had taken my belongings. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. A direct message from Megan. "Where is your reception dress?" she demanded. "I went to check on your closet to make sure your clothes were steamed for tomorrow and everything is gone. Are you seriously hoarding your own wedding dress at the hotel? You are so paranoid." I marveled at the sheer psychological gymnastics required to frame her attempted theft as me being paranoid. She was standing in my empty closet, ankle-deep in spilled champagne, aggressively demanding access to a gown she had zero right to touch. She was trying to gaslight me into returning my property so she could wear it to a party and ruin it. She sent another message rapidly, her toxic entitlement bleeding through the digital text. "Connor is going to be furious when I tell him you moved all your expensive things out. It shows a complete lack of trust. Bring the dress back tonight. I need to make sure the alterations are correct." I did not type out an elaborate explanation. I did not mention the hidden security camera, the spilled alcohol staining my premium floor, or the fact that Zenith Property Management would be sending an armed private security team to clear that house in less than 14 hours. I did not tell her Jamal was currently finalizing her divorce papers, preparing to strip her of her lavish lifestyle forever. I simply typed exactly 6 words. "I will see you at the altar." I hit send and then watched the live video feed. Megan stared at her phone screen, her face twisting in a mix of profound confusion and sudden chilling dread. She read the message twice, looked around the cavernous, empty master suite, and slowly backed out of the room, closing the door firmly behind her. She did not run downstairs to warn Connor. Her selfish desire to avoid admitting she had been caught trying to steal heavily outweighed her loyalty to her brother. They were a family built entirely on lies and taking advantage of one another. Tomorrow morning, that fragile foundation was going to shatter under the weight of reality. I plugged my phone into the charger, turned off the small bedside lamp, and finally fell into a deep, peaceful, and dreamless sleep. I woke up the next morning to the soft, rhythmic chiming of my hotel alarm clock. It was Saturday, the day I was supposed to walk down an aisle covered in white flower petals and permanently bind my financial future, my credit score, and my sanity to a parasitic family. Instead, it was execution day. I stretched my arms above my head, feeling a surge of absolute adrenaline. I did not order a lavish breakfast this time. I needed to remain sharp. I requested a single pot of black coffee, grabbed my encrypted tablet, and immediately dialed Jamal. He answered on the very first ring, his voice sounding entirely too energetic for someone who had been awake since dawn. "We are fully green," Jamal announced, bypassing any polite morning greetings. "The county clerk office processed the commercial transfer late yesterday afternoon. At exactly 6 o'clock this morning, the corporate legal team at Zenith Property Management filed the expedited trespassing injunctions. The judge signed off on the emergency removal order 30 minutes ago, citing severe commercial liability and the threat of unauthorized structural demolition." I smiled, taking a slow sip of the scalding hot coffee. Connor had foolishly put in writing that he was bringing contractors in to tear down walls. That single text message had given Jamal the exact ammunition required to classify them as an active threat to a corporate asset, completely bypassing the agonizing months of a standard residential eviction process. "What about the physical extraction?" I asked, pulling up the digital blueprints of the townhouse on my tablet. "Connor is incredibly arrogant. He is going to argue with whoever you send to the front door." "He will not get the chance to argue," Jamal replied smoothly, the sound of paper shuffling echoing through the speaker. "I did not call the local police precinct for a standard civil standby. They are always understaffed and too gentle with squatters. I contracted a private security firm that specializes in high-asset commercial extractions. They are ex-military contractors. They do not argue, they do not negotiate, and they absolutely do not care about Connor's fake executive persona." Jamal laid out the tactical timeline with breathtaking precision. Connor had boastfully posted in the family group chat that he had scheduled a fleet of luxury black cars to pick them up at exactly 10 o'clock that morning to transport them to the Four Seasons. The security extraction team was currently staged in 2 unmarked transit vans exactly 3 blocks away, completely out of sight. "The minute those black cars pull away from the curb, my team moves in," Jamal explained. "We have a master locksmith on site. He will drill the deadbolts and replace every single lock on the exterior doors in under 10 minutes. The security team will sweep the entire property, pack up those 15 cardboard boxes Brenda brought in, and dump them directly onto the public sidewalk. If Connor tries to go back to the house after the event today, his key will not turn, and a private armed guard will inform him he is trespassing on commercial property." It was a flawless, airtight strategy. They were going to lose the house while they were busy drinking free champagne on my stolen tab. "Everything is set on your end?" I asked. Jamal let out a deep, heavy sigh. But it was not a sigh of stress. It was the sound of a man who was finally dropping a massive burden. Megan came home at 2 in the morning, Jamal said, his tone turning ice cold. She was furious. She tried to lie and say the charity gala was boring, but I already knew she was panicking about your empty closet. While she was out hunting for dresses to steal, I spent my entire evening in my home office drafting my own exit strategy. He paused for a moment, and I could hear the distinct sound of a heavy leather binder being snapped shut. "I finalized the divorce petition," Jamal stated firmly. "I compiled every single hidden credit card statement, every unauthorized wire transfer she made to her mother, and all the proof of her financial infidelity. When we got married, I made her sign an ironclad prenuptial agreement. She thought she was marrying a blank check, but my assets are completely locked down. I am serving her with the papers today, right in front of her entire toxic family, immediately after you dropped the guillotine on Connor." We synchronized our watches like 2 generals preparing for a massive coordinated strike. I ended the call and walked over to the closet. I bypassed the garment bag that held my rehearsal dresses and pulled out the outfit I had specifically selected for today. It was a custom-tailored Tom Ford power suit in a dark, imposing charcoal gray, paired with a crisp white silk blouse and black stiletto heels. It was not the outfit of a blushing bride. It was the armor of a corporate auditor preparing to dismantle a fraudster. I secured my hair in a tight, sleek bun, grabbed my leather briefcase containing the acquired debt portfolio, and walked out the door. The trap was ready to snap shut. Before driving to the Four Seasons, I sat in the plush leather seat of my Porsche, opened my tablet, and tapped into the live security feed of my townhouse one final time. I wanted to witness the exact level of arrogance they were operating on before I systematically destroyed it. The high-definition cameras captured every corner of my living room and kitchen, providing a crystal-clear window into their morning routine. The scene was sickeningly triumphant. Connor was pacing around the kitchen island, wearing a custom navy tuxedo that he had undoubtedly charged to one of the credit cards I had frozen the day before. He clearly had not tried to buy anything yet today, completely oblivious to his financial decapitation. He adjusted his silk bow tie in the reflection of my stainless steel refrigerator puffing out his chest. He looked like a man who believed he had just successfully conquered an empire. He poured himself a cup of coffee, using my expensive espresso machine, leaning back against the quartz countertops with an air of total ownership. From the guest bedroom down the hall, Brenda emerged. She was wearing a gaudy, overly embellished silver gown that looked entirely too formal for a morning event, but perfectly suited her desperate need for attention. She had her smartphone pressed tightly to her ear, speaking loudly enough for the microphone to pick up every single word of her boastful conversation. "Oh, you simply must come see the new house after the honeymoon," Brenda practically shouted to whoever was on the other line. Yes, Connor really stepped up. He told Vanessa that family comes first, and she completely agreed to give me the ground floor. It is a multi-million-dollar property right in the best neighborhood. We are going to tear down the sunroom and build me a massive custom suite. You know how Connor is always taking such good care of his mother? He really is the man of the house now. She laughed loudly, a shrill grating sound, before ending the call and walking into the kitchen to join her son. She reached out and proudly patted his shoulder, beaming at him. "You look so handsome," she cooed. "You finally have everything you deserve. A wealthy wife who knows her place, a beautiful home, and a bright future." Right on cue, Megan sauntered into the frame. She was wearing a tight dark green cocktail dress that she had clearly dug out of her own closet after failing to steal my custom gown the night before. Her face was contoured heavily, hiding the dark circles from her late-night argument with Jamal. She grabbed a bottle of expensive sparkling water from the fridge, completely ignoring the fact that she was currently standing in a house she was actively plotting to strip bare. "Have you heard from Jamal this morning?" Connor asked, glancing at his sister. Megan rolled her eyes dramatically, taking a long sip of the water. "He texted that he had early meetings and would just meet us directly at the hotel. He is being ridiculous. Ever since I told him we secured this house, he has been acting so bitter. He is probably just jealous that you managed to lock down a premium asset without having to pass the bar exam." Connor chuckled, checking his gold watch. "Well, let him be jealous. Today is about us. It is time to go. I want to be at the venue early so I can have a drink with the groomsmen before Vanessa starts stressing out about the seating chart. She has been a nervous wreck all week, so I need to go play the supportive husband." He pulled out his phone and opened a rideshare application. "I am ordering the cars now," he announced. I requested 3 luxury black SUVs. "We have a massive group of relatives waiting at the hotel lobby, and I want us to pull up looking like royalty. This is our big day." I watched the screen intently. The digital clock on my tablet read 9:45. Jamal's private security extraction team was currently idling 3 blocks away, waiting for the signal. 10 minutes later, I watched as Connor, Brenda, and Megan grabbed their suit jackets and designer clutches. They walked toward the front door, laughing and joking about the free premium open bar they were about to drain. Connor stepped out first, followed by his mother and sister. He pulled the heavy oak door shut behind them. The deadbolt engaged with a loud, definitive click. They were officially out of the house. I immediately picked up my cell phone and dialed Jamal. The target has left the premises, I said cleanly. The house is completely empty, Jamal replied instantly, his voice sharp and authoritative. Copy that. The security team is moving in right now. The locks will be drilled in exactly 2 minutes. I hung up the phone and closed my tablet, placing it securely into my leather briefcase alongside the defaulted promissory note. I started the engine of my Porsche, the low rumble vibrating through the steering wheel. Connor felt like an absolute king this morning, leaving his castle to attend a lavish royal wedding. He had no idea the castle was already sold, his crown was forged, and the queen was waiting at the venue with a financial guillotine. I pulled out of the parking garage and headed straight for the Four Seasons. The final act was about to begin. I arrived at the Four Seasons a full hour before the scheduled start time. The valet took my keys with a polite nod, and I walked through the opulent marble lobby with the unbothered stride of a woman who held all the cards. Madeline, the senior event director, was waiting for me near the grand staircase. She gave my tailored charcoal Tom Ford suit a brief, appreciative look before leading me down the hall toward the main event space. The hotel staff had executed my exact modifications with absolute, ruthless perfection. The grand ballroom, which just yesterday had been draped in white chiffon and adorned with thousands of imported orchids, was completely unrecognizable. Rows of sleek black conference chairs faced a heavy wooden stage. The lighting was stark and professional, not romantic. The massive high-definition projector screen dominated the center wall, completely blank and waiting for my laptop feed. To the right, a massive corporate buffet line was set up with silver chafing dishes. To the left, a fully stocked premium open bar stood ready, manned by 2 bartenders who had been specifically instructed not to cut anyone off until the final bill was presented to Connor. It was the perfect arena for a financial slaughter. I set up my encrypted laptop on the podium, running a quick test to ensure the projector displayed Connor's fraudulent promissory note with crystal-clear resolution. Once the technical check was complete, I stepped off the stage and moved into the small, elevated audio-visual control booth at the back of the room. It gave me a perfect vantage point to watch the arrival without being seen by anyone. At exactly 10:45, the chaotic circus finally arrived. Through the lobby security feed patched into my tablet, I watched the 3 luxury black SUVs pull up to the main entrance, closely followed by a chartered minibus carrying 50 of Connor's extended relatives. The valets rushed forward to open the doors. Connor stepped out first, adjusting his suit jacket with an exaggerated air of self-importance. He did not even bother acknowledging the valet who opened his door. Instead, he snapped his fingers at a passing bellhop, demanding someone assist his mother immediately. Brenda climbed out of the SUV in her glaring silver gown, waving to her extended family as if she were stepping onto a red carpet. Megan followed closely behind, looking severely underdressed in her dark green cocktail dress, but acting equally entitled and loud. The entire group flooded the serene, quiet lobby of the Four Seasons, their loud voices and boisterous laughter shattering the elegant atmosphere. Connor marched directly up to the pristine mahogany front desk, bypassing a long line of waiting hotel guests. "I am the groom," Connor announced loudly to the front desk, concierge slapping his hand down on the marble counter. "I need the key cards for the bridal suite immediately. My bride is probably up there panicking, and my mother needs a place to touch up her makeup before the ceremony begins today." The young concierge exchanged a deeply confused look with her manager. Madeline had thoroughly briefed the entire staff about the billing transfer and the event modification, but watching Connor arrogantly demand a bridal suite for a corporate risk seminar was clearly jarring. The concierge recovered quickly, offering a tight, professional smile to the group. "I apologize, sir," the concierge replied smoothly. "We do not have a bridal suite reserved under your name for today. However, your designated event space is fully prepared. The event director requested that we escort your entire party directly to the ballroom." Connor frowned, clearly annoyed by the slight inconvenience, but his massive ego quickly smoothed it over. He turned to his uncle, who was standing nearby, and laughed loudly. "Vanessa probably canceled the suite to save a few bucks. She is always cutting corners when it comes to luxury. It does not matter. I am footing the bill for the reception anyway, so let us just get down there and start the party. The open bar better be pouring top shelf. He waved his hand, signaling the massive group of 50 relatives to follow him. The hotel staff, wearing expressions of thinly veiled amusement and confusion, guided the loud, chaotic procession down the long carpeted hallway toward the grand ballroom. From the dark control booth, I watched them approach the massive double doors through the hallway cameras. Connor was grinning from ear to ear, patting his cousins on the back, fully expecting to walk into a fairy tale wedding funded entirely by my bank account. He expected a string quartet playing a romantic overture. He expected to see me standing at an altar desperate for his approval. He reached out and grabbed the brass handles of the ballroom doors, completely oblivious to the fact that he was about to step onto a corporate chopping block. I placed my finger firmly over the projector power button, taking a deep breath as the doors swung wide open. The heavy brass handles yielded to Connor's aggressive push, and the massive double doors of the grand ballroom swung inward. He stepped across the threshold with a wide, triumphant grin, his chest puffed out in his custom navy tuxedo, fully prepared to be washed in the romantic melodies of a string quartet and the adoring applause of his extended family. Instead, he was met with the cold, sterile hum of an industrial air conditioning unit and the stark glare of overhead presentation lighting. Connor froze instantly, his polished leather shoes halting on the patterned hotel carpet. The 50 relatives marching behind him created a chaotic bottleneck, bumping into each other as the procession abruptly stopped. The loud, boisterous laughter of the crowd died in their throats, replaced by a wave of heavy, suffocating silence. There were no imported orchids. There was no white chiffon draping from the high ceiling. There was no aisle runner, no 10-tier wedding cake, and absolutely no altar. The room was arranged with military precision. Rows of identical black conference chairs sat perfectly aligned, facing the raised wooden stage at the far end of the room. A massive high-definition projector screen hung directly in the center of the wall, displaying a stark white background with a single bold corporate logo. And standing center stage, bathed in the unforgiving light, was me. I was not wearing a $15,000 custom silk gown. I was wearing my charcoal gray Tom Ford power suit, my hair pulled back into a severe, flawless bun. I stood behind the heavy wooden podium, my posture rigid and commanding, looking down at the man who thought he had successfully stolen my life. Standing exactly 2 feet to my right was Jamal. He looked impeccable in a tailored black suit, his expression entirely unreadable, both hands gripping the handle of his structured leather briefcase. From the elevated audio-visual control booth, the technician hit the main switch, flooding the stage with even brighter illumination. The sheer confusion on Connor's face was intoxicating. His eyes darted around the cavernous, empty corporate setup, desperately searching for any sign of a wedding reception. Vanessa Connor finally managed to say, his voice echoing weakly in the large room. "What is this? Where are the flowers? Why are you wearing a suit? Did the hotel double book our ballroom?" He turned around, looking frantically for a member of the event staff. "Hey, where's the manager? They set up the wrong room." I leaned forward, positioning my mouth inches from the microphone attached to the podium. My voice boomed through the state-of-the-art surround sound speakers, crisp, loud, and entirely devoid of emotion. "There is no mistake, Connor," I announced. "The hotel executed my exact instructions. Welcome to the Apex Capital Management Risk and Liability Seminar. Please tell your guest to take a seat. We have a very tight agenda to cover today." A collective murmur of profound confusion swept through the crowd of relatives. Brenda pushed her way to the front of the group, her gaudy silver gown swishing loudly against the carpet. She clutched her sequined purse, her face twisting into an ugly mask of pure outrage. "What kind of sick joke is this?" Brenda shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the stage. "My son is supposed to be getting married today. You are humiliating him in front of our entire family. Where is the wedding?" "There is no wedding, Brenda," I replied smoothly, staring directly into her panicked eyes. There was never going to be a wedding the moment you moved your cardboard boxes into my living room and tried to claim my property as your own. You wanted a woman who would quietly fund your lifestyle. Unfortunately, you got a forensic auditor who decided to look at the receipts. Megan elbowed her way past her mother, her eyes locking immediately onto Jamal. Her face turned a dangerous shade of red. Jamal, what the hell are you doing up there? Get down from that stage right now. You are supposed to be sitting with us. Tell this crazy woman to stop ruining my brother's wedding. Jamal stepped up to the microphone, adjusting his tie with complete calm. He looked down at his wife with a gaze so cold it could freeze water. I am acting in my professional capacity as senior legal counsel for Zenith Property Management Megan. And as of this morning, I am also acting as a highly motivated plaintiff in our impending divorce proceedings. I suggest you sit down and listen, because this presentation heavily involves your immediate future as well. The entire room gasped in unison. Megan's jaw dropped open, all the color instantly draining from her heavily contoured face. She stumbled backward, bumping into Connor, who was still staring at the stage in absolute paralyzed horror. He was finally beginning to realize that the woman he thought he had broken into submission was actually the architect of a massive, inescapable trap. The heavy double doors at the back of the ballroom slowly swung shut, closing with a heavy thud that sealed the family inside. The security guards I had requested took their positions at the exits. Connor was officially boxed in. I picked up the small black remote resting on the podium. "Let us begin with the first item on the agenda," I said, clicking the button. The massive projector screen behind me flickered to life. The financial autopsy of Connor's fabricated life was officially underway. Before the first slide could even fully render on the massive screen, a side door near the catering buffet opened. Madeline, the senior event director at the Four Seasons, stepped into the ballroom accompanied by 2 hotel security guards. She held a sleek black leather folio. The room was so incredibly quiet, you could hear the soft click of her heels against the patterned carpet as she walked directly toward Connor. He was still standing frozen near the back of the room, surrounded by his increasingly uncomfortable relatives. Madeline stopped right in front of him and opened the folio, extracting a crisp, multi-page document. "Good morning, sir," she said, her voice carrying a practiced, unwavering professional authority. "Per the structural modifications made to this event yesterday afternoon, I am required to collect the final balance for the catering, open bar, and ballroom reservation prior to the start of the corporate seminar." Connor stared at the paper she was holding out to him, as if it were coated in poison. "What are you talking about?" he stammered, his face flushing a deep, embarrassed crimson. "The wedding was already paid for. Vanessa handled the deposit. Go give the bill to her." He pointed a trembling finger toward the stage where I stood observing his complete unraveling. Madeline did not even glance in my direction. "I am afraid that is incorrect, sir. The primary billing profile was legally transferred entirely to your name yesterday. We have your authorized electronic signature on the master contract accepting full financial liability for this booking. Vanessa is no longer financially affiliated with this event or this venue in any capacity. The total outstanding balance due today is exactly $100,000. How would you like to process this payment?" A collective gasp rippled through the crowd of 50 relatives. Brenda grabbed her chest, her jaw dropping open in absolute shock. $100,000, she shrieked, looking frantically between Madeline and her son. "Connor, what is going on here?" Connor wiped a heavy bead of sweat from his forehead. His carefully constructed facade of the wealthy, capable provider was rapidly crumbling in front of his entire extended family. He tried to laugh it off, puffing out his chest in a pathetic display of masculine bravado. "Fine. It is fine, Mom. Just a little clerical error. I will handle it right now." He reached into his custom-tailored navy tuxedo jacket and pulled out his expensive leather wallet. He dramatically extracted the heavy metal luxury travel rewards card, the exact secondary card I had permanently frozen under the table during our fake lunch yesterday. He handed it to Madeline with a smug, arrogant smirk. Run this. And keep the tab open for the bar. My family is going to drink heavily today. Madeline took the card, swiped it through the mobile payment terminal she carried, and waited. The machine beeped a harsh, flat tone. A red light flashed across the digital screen. Declined, she stated simply, handing the heavy metal card back to him. Connor frowned, his smirk vanishing instantly. That is impossible. Run it again. The machine is obviously broken. Madeline swiped it a second time. The same harsh beep echoed in the quiet ballroom. Declined. Panic began to seep into Connor's eyes. He frantically dug into his wallet and pulled out the premium dining credit card. Here, use this one. The bank probably flagged the other one for an unusually large transaction. Madeline swiped the second card through the reader. Declined. The crowd of relatives began to whisper loudly among themselves. Uncle George shifted uncomfortably in his dark suit. Megan stared at her brother in absolute horror, her own frozen credit cards suddenly making terrifying sense. Connor's hands began to shake visibly. He pulled out the third and final secondary card, the general spending account, and shoved it at the event director. Declined. Madeline repeated, her tone completely devoid of sympathy. Sir, if you cannot provide a valid form of payment immediately, I will be forced to instruct my staff to clear the corporate buffet and permanently close the open bar. I do not understand, he choked out. He frantically fumbled with his smartphone, logging into his banking application. I have a joint account. There is liquid cash. He opened the app expecting to see the financial safety net I built. Instead, the screen revealed a perfect balance of $0.00. Connor dropped his phone. It hit the carpet with a dull thud. Where is my money? He yelled, looking up at the stage. I stepped closer to the microphone, my voice slicing through the tense air. It was never your money, Connor. And as you are about to see, you have much bigger financial problems than a catering bill today. Brenda snatched her sequined purse from a nearby chair, her face contorted in a mix of profound humiliation and explosive rage. She stomped her silver high heels against the patterned carpet, completely disregarding the 50 relatives watching her public meltdown. This is an absolute outrage, Brenda screamed, her voice shrill enough to echo off the high ceilings of the ballroom. She grabbed Connor firmly by the arm, trying to physically pull him toward the heavy double doors. We are leaving right now, Connor. I will not stand here and allow this ungrateful, hysterical woman to humiliate us in front of our entire family. If she wants to throw a tantrum and cancel her own wedding over a simple room arrangement, let her. We do not need her, and we certainly do not need this hotel. We are going back to our townhouse. We will order our own food, celebrate by ourselves, and she can figure out how to pay this ridiculous bill on her own. She tugged at him again, fully expecting to march her family back to the luxury property they had invaded just yesterday. Connor, still trembling from the reality of his drained bank accounts, nodded frantically. You are right, Mom. Let us go home. He turned back toward the stage, trying to muster one final shred of defensive arrogance. You are completely insane, Vanessa. Keep the hotel. We are going back to my house and you are not getting through the front door. I did not say a word. I simply stepped back from the podium and nodded to the man standing to my right. Jamal took a measured step forward, his polished dress shoes completely silent against the wooden stage. He reached into the inner breast pocket of his tailored black suit and smoothly extracted a heavy silver-plated corporate identification badge. He held it up under the bright stage lights for the entire room to see. I am afraid you are not going anywhere near that property, Connor. Jamal stated, his deep voice projecting absolute legal authority through the microphone. I am the senior legal counsel for Apex Real Estate. Yesterday afternoon, my corporate conglomerate executed an instant cash transaction to fully acquire the townhouse located at that address. The deed was legally transferred, recorded, and stamped by the county clerk. Vanessa is no longer the owner of that property. And more importantly, neither are you. Connor stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes widening in pure disbelief. What? No, that is impossible. I have established residency. I have boxes there. My mother lives there. Jamal let out a sharp, cynical laugh. Moving 15 boxes of garbage into another person's living room without a signed lease does not establish legal residency. It establishes trespassing. Furthermore, you were formally served with a 48-hour notice to vacate, which you arrogantly ignored. Because the townhouse is now classified as a commercial asset, slated for corporate redevelopment, standard residential eviction delays do not apply to you. Brenda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. You cannot do this. All my belongings are in that house. My clothes, my jewelry, my family photos. I picked up the small black remote from the podium and clicked the right arrow button. The massive high-definition projector screen behind us instantly shifted from the stark white corporate logo to a crystal-clear, full-color live video feed. It was the exterior security camera mounted directly above the front door of the townhouse. The bright morning sun illuminated the manicured front lawn and the wide concrete sidewalk. The entire ballroom fell dead silent as the 50 relatives turned their attention to the massive screen. On the live feed, a team of 4 burly private security contractors dressed in dark tactical gear were actively swarming the property. The heavy oak front door was propped wide open. A professional locksmith was kneeling by the handle, aggressively drilling out the deadbolt to replace the entire locking mechanism. As the crowd watched in stunned silence, 2 of the security contractors marched out of the front door carrying heavy loads. One was holding Connor's expensive set of golf clubs, and the other was carrying 3 of Brenda's battered cardboard boxes. Without hesitation, the contractors forcefully dumped the items directly onto the public Chicago sidewalk. No, Brenda wailed, a visceral sound of pure horror escaping her throat. That is my property. Jamal stared down at them, his expression entirely devoid of sympathy. I am protecting a corporate asset from squatters. You played a stupid game, and you just lost the board. Connor collapsed into a nearby conference chair, his legs giving out beneath him. He had no money, no venue, and now absolutely nowhere to live. But the financial slaughter was not over. I clicked the remote again. The massive screen flickered, replacing the live feed of their eviction with a high-resolution scan of a legal document. It was the formal promissory note from the predatory Nevada lender. The principal amount of $150,000 was highlighted in bright yellow. But what drew the loudest gasp from the room was the magnified image of my forged signature at the bottom. That is felony fraud, Connor. I announced, my voice echoing through the silent room. You stole my financial identity to cover your catastrophic gambling losses. But instead of going to the police immediately, I used my corporate shell company to purchase this defaulted debt. I am your sole creditor now. You have exactly 7 days to pay me in full, or this evidence goes directly to the local FBI field office for criminal prosecution. The absolute reality of his catastrophic financial situation finally crushed him completely. Connor stared at the massive projector screen, his face completely devoid of color. The arrogant, boastful man who had strutted into the hotel demanding a bridal suite was entirely gone. His legs gave out completely. He dropped heavily to his knees right there on the patterned carpet, burying his face in his hands. A loud, pathetic sob echoed through the quiet ballroom. Please, Vanessa. He choked out, tears streaming down his face, completely ignoring the 50 relatives watching him in absolute disgust. I am so sorry. I was desperate. I will do anything. Please do not send me to prison. I have absolutely nothing left. He was begging, his voice cracking with genuine terror, but I felt absolutely nothing for him. Realizing her son was entirely destroyed and their luxurious future was completely obliterated, Brenda resorted to her ultimate manipulation tactic. She let out a piercing, dramatic shriek and clutched her chest with both hands. I cannot breathe, she wailed loudly, her eyes darting around to see who was watching her performance. My heart. You are killing me, Vanessa. With a theatrical sigh, she collapsed onto the floor, waiting for the crowd of relatives to rush to her aid. But nobody moved. Madeline, anticipating the drama, calmly gestured to 2 hotel paramedics, who were already stationed near the exit. They walked briskly to Brenda, knelt beside her, and efficiently attached a portable blood pressure cuff and pulse oximeter. Less than 30 seconds later, The lead paramedic stood up. Her heart rate is completely normal, and her oxygen levels are perfect, he announced loudly to the room. She is entirely faking it. A wave of embarrassed, uncomfortable murmurs quickly swept through the large crowd of gathered relatives. His uncle shook his head in disgust, turning his back on the family he had flown across the country to celebrate. Brenda opened her eyes, realizing her performance had failed miserably. Her face turned a bright, furious red as the paramedic stepped away, leaving her sitting awkwardly on the floor in her gaudy silver gown. The sheer humiliation of being medically cleared as a fraud in front of her entire extended family was the exact punishment she deeply deserved. Megan could no longer contain her rage. She stepped over her mother and marched directly toward the stage, pointing a manicured finger at Jamal. "You set us up!" she screamed, her voice completely unhinged. "You are supposed to be my husband. You are supposed to protect this family. You are a disgusting traitor, and I am going to take half of everything you own for this betrayal." Jamal did not flinch. He calmly opened his structured leather briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He stepped off the stage, walked right up to his screaming wife, and pressed the envelope firmly against her chest. "I am protecting my assets from a family of parasites," Jamal replied smoothly. "You signed an ironclad prenuptial agreement, Megan. You get absolutely nothing. Consider yourself officially served today." Jamal turned around, gave me a brief, respectful nod, and walked out of the ballroom through the side door, leaving Megan staring blankly at the divorce petition in her trembling hands. Madeline stepped forward, flanked by the large hotel security guards who were ready to assist. "This event is officially concluded," she announced to the room. "If the groom cannot provide payment for the venue, I must ask everyone to vacate the premises immediately. Security will escort you all out right now." The relatives began to filter out quickly, eager to distance themselves from the catastrophic embarrassment. Connor, Brenda, and Megan were forcefully escorted out by the armed guards, screaming and crying as they were pushed toward the exit doors. They walked out of the Four Seasons entirely penniless, completely homeless, and utterly defeated today, forever removed from my life. I watched them leave feeling absolute and complete freedom. Exactly 3 months passed since that spectacular collapse at the Four Seasons, and the air in Chicago had never felt quite so refreshing. I stood on the expansive wraparound balcony of my brand-new luxury penthouse, leaning against the glass railing and watching the golden hour sunlight reflect off the glittering surface of Lake Michigan. Selling the townhouse to Zenith Property Management had flooded my offshore accounts with millions in liquid capital, allowing me to upgrade to a space that was entirely my own. There were no ground floor extensions required here, no dusty construction zones, and absolutely no unwelcome family members trying to claim my sanctuary. The fallout from that catastrophic Saturday morning had been swift, brutal, and entirely legal. Connor did not just lose his wealthy fiancé and his stolen house. He lost his entire fabricated corporate identity. 2 weeks after the wedding that never happened, his prestigious sales firm initiated their routine annual employee background and financial compliance checks. They were looking for standard corporate liabilities, but instead their internal auditors stumbled directly onto the massive crater of his financial ruin. The predatory Nevada lender had officially reported the $150,000 defaulted promissory note to all 3 major credit bureaus. Furthermore, my corporate shell company, Apex Capital Management, had formally filed an aggressive civil suit against him for the forged signature. The sheer volume of his high-risk debt and the glaring allegations of felony fraud made him radioactive. His corporate firm fired him immediately, citing severe violations of their ethical conduct policies. He was escorted out of his office building by security holding a small cardboard box of his desk belongings. It was a perfectly poetic reflection of how his mother's belongings had been dumped on my sidewalk. Without his massive corporate salary, Connor could no longer afford his tailored suits or his expensive golf club memberships. With his credit score completely obliterated, no reputable landlord in the city of Chicago would ever approve him for an apartment lease. He and Brenda had been forced to retreat deep into the rural outskirts of the state. They were now renting a cramped, single-wide aluminum trailer in a dusty park 50 miles away from the city. I heard through the grapevine that Brenda spends her days bitterly complaining to the neighbors about how the economy ruined her life completely, ignoring the fact that her son's gambling addiction and her own entitlement were the true architects of their misery. Connor was currently working night shifts at a local warehouse, spending his meager paychecks trying to desperately settle the overwhelming legal fees he now owed my LLC. Megan did not fare any better. Jamal was a brilliant attorney, and his divorce execution was a masterclass in legal precision. The ironclad prenuptial agreement held up flawlessly in court. Because Megan had never contributed a single dollar to their marital assets, the judge awarded her absolutely nothing. Jamal kept the house, the cars, and his massive investment portfolios. Megan was unceremoniously dumped into the harsh reality of the working class. She was currently renting a tiny, unrenovated studio apartment and working 40 hours a week as a retail associate at a suburban mall. She had been forced to sell off her collection of designer handbags just to make her first month of rent. The fake rich lifestyle she had weaponized against me was permanently dead. I heard the heavy glass sliding door of the penthouse open behind me. Jamal stepped out onto the terrace holding a chilled bottle of premium Sauvignon Blanc and 2 crystal glasses. He looked incredibly relaxed, the heavy exhaustion of his toxic marriage completely gone from his eyes. We were no longer just former family members bound by a shared nightmare. We were close platonic friends and highly lucrative business partners. After the flawless execution of the townhouse sale, we officially merged our real estate investments under the Apex corporate umbrella. We were currently negotiating the acquisition of a commercial skyscraper in the financial district. To a flawless quarter, Jamal said smoothly, pouring the pale golden wine into the glasses and handing one to me, and to the beautiful silence of a drama-free life. I clapped my glass against his, the crystal ringing with a sharp, clear note. To absolutely airtight contracts, I replied with a genuine smile. Jamal took a sip of his wine, leaning against the railing beside me to admire the breathtaking panoramic view of the city below. They really thought they could just out-yell you, he mused quietly. They thought whoever made the most noise and demanded the most attention would automatically win the negotiation. I took a slow, savoring sip of the cold wine, letting the cool breeze wash over my face. That is the fundamental mistake people like Connor and Brenda always make. They rely entirely on emotional terrorism. They use guilt, loud arguments, and fake heart attacks to bully rational people into surrendering their boundaries. They genuinely believe that screaming louder makes them powerful. But as I looked out over the vibrant city, I knew the absolute truth. True power does not require raising your voice. True power is not found in screaming matches, toxic group chats, or desperate ultimatums. True power is entirely silent. It is the cold, calculated patience of an auditor reviewing a fraudulent ledger. It is the quiet discipline of gathering undeniable proof. It is burying your toxic abusers under a mountain of legally binding paperwork, watching them completely dismantle their own lives, and then simply walking away to enjoy your fabulous, wealthy, and entirely unbothered existence. I turned my back to the sunset, walking inside my beautiful penthouse to discuss our next multi-million-dollar acquisition. The ledger was finally perfectly balanced and the books were permanently closed.